Hey everybody, Reid here. I just wanted to hop on today before today's podcast to give you a little heads up about what you'll be listening to. Today is the big episode 50, which I think is a good milestone for any podcast who have recorded. And, for a long time, I thought about trying to do something, whether it was a best of or, bring back on the past guest or figure out some way to mark the occasion. And long story short, I kind of ran short of ideas and definitely short of time. So while Dorothy and I are spending spring break this week, Dorothy's spring break in San Antonio, I thought it would be really fun to play back our very first episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro, which was my interview with Dorothy about how I got my start in the wedding videography business. I know we have a lot of new listeners since the very first episode, and whether or not you've had a chance to go back in the past or if you're recently listening to this, I think it would be really fun for everybody to take a listen to this episode while Dorothy and I are enjoying her spring break in Texas. I hope everybody has a fun listen to this. And as a reminder, we are getting into our second year of recording new episodes of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro each and every week. And so if you're a vendor, wedding vendor of any kind, whether that's a photographer, or videographer, we just had Mark Schaefer, the magician, on last week. Any sort of wedding vendor, feel free to drop me a line, Reid, R-E-I-D, at bestmadevideos.com, or else you can submit the questionnaire that I post with every podcast that we post, every episode. I always post the link to the questionnaire if you're interested in coming on. So there really should be no reason if you're interested in coming on and telling your story about being a wedding vendor, send me an email or drop me a line, and we can get you scheduled for the next year here of the Get to Know Your Wedding Pro podcast. Also, if you're listening to this, we would appreciate any likes and reviews. I've set up a handy link at www.bestmadevideos.com/subscribe. That's a great way to go if you have iTunes and you want to subscribe to the podcast on there and leave us a review. Otherwise, if you're listening to this on Facebook or any other form of that way, you can also like and subscribe on YouTube or give us a thumbs up on Facebook. Again, this is a rebroadcast of our very first episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro with Dorothy and I talking about my start in the wedding videography business. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks again. Until next week, this has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. Thanks. Bye. Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reid with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington. We do wedding videography, corporate videography, and basically film any other live event that you might have. And today is a very exciting day. Not only is it our first official podcast, but we have a special guest. So, special guest, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dorothy. Nice to meet you, and I'm excited to be here.
Dorothy is my wife of 2 years. We got married back in August of 2016, and I brought her on here today to help interview me because as I'm launching a new interview series, I thought it would only be fair to put my money where my mouth is and give my own origin story of sorts about how I got into wedding videography. So Dorothy was gracious enough to take time on her weekend to come and help do this interview.
Yep, I'm so excited to be here and to help launch this podcast. It's going to be awesome.
So, Dorothy, what's your first probing question?
So, I guess just kind of wanting to hear a little bit about your story and how you got started in videography. Take us back.
So I started back in 2004 when I went to college over at Gonzaga University. And I always think it's funny now, having married a teacher, that I think I must have selected something on one sheet of paper at one point talking about how I was interested in teaching, because my first class ever at Gonzaga was actually in the teaching building, which apparently they had signed me up for like 6 different teaching courses, which I quickly discovered that maybe I should diversify starting out. So I started taking journalism classes, and one of the first classes I took was radio broadcasting, and that involved us sitting in a small recording studio 2 or 3 days a week and basically recording the same PSA every time that we would come into the class. We would come in, record it, edit it, and then it would seem like every week we'd come in again and the professor would forget that we had just done the exact same thing.
A PSA is a public service announcement?
Yeah, and so it got really repetitive because it just felt like we were never really growing or doing anything new. And
you never felt challenged?
No, never felt challenged. And so luckily, one day our professor was sick and we had Dan Garrity come into the class. And you know Dan, we were just at his retirement party last weekend in Spokane. And Dan was the director of the broadcast program at Gonzaga. And we hit it off and ended up doing some editing work after class. And he had basically told me, hey, man, it seems like you really have a knack for this. And so he basically said, hey, man, I teach the TV side of this program, and the class is always full. But if you wanted me to, I could, reserve you a spot next semester and I could get you in. So I thought, well, that'd be really interesting. I had never really thought about working in TV or broadcasting or anything like that. But I took him up on this offer, and so that would be the second semester of sophomore year. I started on the broadcast program.
Wow. So you probably felt like you learned a lot more under Dan's leadership and in the broadcast program than you would have in the journalism program.
Yeah, and also I took a lot of print journalism classes, and a lot of it seemed really antiquated to me at the time. We were doing a lot of newspaper front page layouts, how to, print and cut and format a newspaper. And even back in 2004, it really seemed like everything was moving online. And so even as a freshman, sophomore, I sat there and thought, man, why are we spending time talking about how to literally, whether the correct margins to print the front page of a newspaper, to put it on like a spool, like an old school, I don't know anybody in my immediate circle that even has a newspaper delivered anymore.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
So anyway, we started doing the broadcasting, and basically it kind of spiraled from there. We started doing news programs and comedy programs, interview programs. And it wasn't until junior year when we really got to go out in the field and produce our own videos, which was a lot of fun.
So you got experience doing not only videography, but also being behind the camera and video and interviewing people and different aspects of broadcasting.
Yeah, the coolest thing about Gonzaga was you really got to do everything from in front of the camera, being at the anchor desk, behind the camera, doing the post-production, doing the editing, doing the producing, running the audio. And I really did enjoy just that more hands-on aspect where taking journalism classes or math or any sort of thing, you're stuck in the classroom, and I really have always struggled with that, the sitting and, the lecture and the note-taking. And so being able to go out, take a camera on a Saturday afternoon and film a music video, or having to go, like we would go to the local park to shoot videos about, the Ducks or a new restaurant that had opened at Gonzaga, or, a new program that was being offered. It was really fun to go out and do those sorts of things.
Wow. So that probably really set you up well too for news, which you kind of segued into that then from Gonzaga, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So basically, I had no intention of ever going into news, and I think I've said that probably in any interview I've ever done. I had a lot of friends that wanted to be in front of the camera. They wanted to be television reporters, and so they would basically enlist me to go out every day to shoot and edit stories for them. So my friend Ian Cole, who we just saw at he's a reporter now in the Bay Area outside of San Francisco. We would go shoot stories, and I would help him edit and put together. To be a TV reporter, you need to have a demo reel to send to your local news stations. So basically, you get 2, 3, 4 of the best news stories that you have, put them on a DVD or a VHS tape, and send it to your local news station. And so in, the basically probably the end of junior year through senior year, I had 2, 3, 4 different, colleagues, I guess, students that I was helping to get their demo tapes together. And at the time, I was wanting to get into video production. And so I had been sending my own demo tapes to the Bay Area. My friend lived down outside of Santa Clara at the time. And I had been sending tapes all over the Bay Area, not realizing that the San Francisco television market is super, super competitive to get into. As a college student, I didn't realize that. And basically, it was a losing effort that I was never probably ever going to find anything of any substance at all. So it was probably late spring and I was really frustrated and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I think it was my friend Sebastian, who was another reporter, had told me, hey man, well, you've been putting together demo tapes for everybody for the last 2 years. Why don't you just put together a news demo reel and send it out and go into television? And even if you don't end up being in news for your whole life, at least you could do it for a couple of years and get, your feet wet.
Huh. Wow. Interesting. So then you put together the demo reel and then you got picked up by a station in Bakersfield, right? And so you were successful.
Yeah. So I put together, I think, 3 or 4 different stories and I mailed 3 out to Yakima, Washington. I think I mailed 3 out to Medford, Oregon, which was another starting market. And then I sent them out to Bakersfield and I got 1 phone call. And it was actually, funny enough, I was taking a class in the exact same building where I had my first teaching class. And I can't remember what the class was, but we were sitting there in class and it was literally my last class, the last hour of class I would ever have at Gonzaga. And I got a phone call and, went to voicemail because I was in class. And I just thought, man, who is this, whatever number calling? And lo and behold, it was, John Pelios, the news director of the NBC station in Bakersfield, calling to do a phone interview to see if I would be interested in working there.
Wow. So you skipped out of class and got a job.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. We did a phone interview and I remember feeling more prepared for that than any job interview I had ever had previously because I had worked at Blockbuster and Jamba Juice and other jobs where, maybe you're not super passionate or not, what do I know about fruit smoothie blends or whatever. But for the first time ever, I really did feel confident about my skills and expertise, or what expertise I thought I had as a graduating college student. But I really did feel comfortable. And so he offered to fly me down for a job interview. And this was the week before graduation. I guess there was actually a direct flight from Spokane to Bakersfield, which is really weird.
Wow, that's random. Yeah.
And so I remember talking to our engineer at the time at Gonzaga, Phil Taylor, and I had said, man, Phil, I'm really, really nervous. This is my first real job interview. I mean, this is, could be the start of my career. And I remember Phil telling me, well, they're flying you down to Bakersfield for a job interview. Like, I think you probably have a pretty good shot. They're not going to fly too many 21-year-olds down for a job.
Yeah. Wow. You must have made a good impression during that phone interview for them to want to do that.
Yeah. So I went down and interviewed and toured the station. And I think at noon that day, John and Mike, who was the assistant news director, offered me a cameraman position job. And kind of the rest was history.
Wow. That's crazy. So then you moved down there right after graduation.
Yeah, so I moved down after graduation. I think it was the day after or 2 days after. My mom, Sue, helped me move down, and we drove from Spokane to Seattle and then down to Bakersfield over the course of 2 days. I think it's a 15-hour drive from Seattle, and I drove my car down there and followed my mom behind in the U-Haul the whole time down. So,
wow, that's crazy. So then down in Bakersfield, you spent how many years? And you learned a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was, it was a really interesting time. I had never worked in a real TV station before. I had never interned in a TV station before because, like I said, I thought I was going to go into video production. And so going in, literally the first day, they gave me my camera. You get your assigned camera, tripod, and your own news vehicle. And I remember them saying, well, you need to be on call tonight because in Bakersfield, we didn't have a full staff. When I worked in Seattle, you have guys that work at midnight and 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. and work throughout the day. Well, in Bakersfield, I think we had 8 photographers on staff. And so every night, a different person would have to be on call. And so that meant that you would take your gear home with you. And basically, if anything happened from the day, the time you got off the clock until the next morning or whenever the next, guy would start, that they would call you and you would have to go out and cover it. And I remember there was a time when I worked there where I think I went into work on Thursday, or I went into work on Friday, and I would work Friday, Saturday through on call. Basically, I was on the clock for like 4.5 days straight. So
wow, that's crazy. Kind of a rude awakening coming from maybe college life where you're just having classes and then your time is your own, but you were kind of on, like you said.
Yeah, it was interesting. And so that first day I came in, they gave me my car, they gave me my camera, and they said, well, you're on call tonight. And I had never used a broadcast camera. I had been in Bakersfield, I think for, 4 days. It was really hard. And that night I got called at, 2 a.m. or whatever, and it was a fatal homicide crash. And I was out there filming this and having just graduated, I think it was like a week before. It was definitely a new experience, and it was really interesting.
Wow. But you still felt capable and prepared for that.
Yeah, I did. I really did feel like my education got me, where I was, and I felt pretty confident about it. And, in Bakersfield, a lot of the people were young. There were a lot of kids out of college or had, graduated from like UC Bakersfield and then stuck around. But it wasn't like Seattle where there were people that had been there for 20, 30 years. We were all fairly young, which was nice because, you would have people to hang out with and, go out and drink or whatever. But yeah.
You're all kind of learning together then.
Exactly. Yeah. We were all learning together. So it was fun.
Nice. Awesome. So then you really learned a lot down in Bakersfield. And then how did you finally transition back up to the Seattle news market?
Yeah, so my goal always was to get back to Seattle. That's where my family was, and that's where a lot of my friends from high school were. And it's really hard because in news, you really have to build your way back up. So you start somewhere small like Bakersfield or Medford, like I said, I had applied to. I think Bakersfield was market 126. And usually then you would go to like maybe a top 50 market. And then, like Vegas, a lot of people would go from Bakersfield to Las Vegas because that was, kind of that next step up. And then you would get back to somewhere like Seattle, which I think Seattle is market 13. And so like if you're in the top 15, top 20 market, that's, unless you want to go, national and work in New York. That's a pretty good spot to land. And so again, I don't know if I knew that or like applying to, the Bay Area out of college, but I thought, well, I'm just going to wait and I'm going to go from Bakersfield to Seattle because I really didn't want to make that it would have been another, 2, 3, 4 years to do my time in Bakersfield, go to, Vegas and then go back up to Seattle. So I applied and
to a bunch of different news stations in Seattle, or?
Yeah, I would apply to news stations, video production companies, and it was tough because I was working in California. And so, I would always have to preface and say, well, I'm in Bakersfield. I would be up, for a job interview if I need to. But, it was a really tough sell. And so finally, I thought, okay, I just need to get up to Seattle so that I can find a job and that I can be available for an interview if they need me to. And so I just decided I needed to do that. So I gave my notice. We took a family vacation to Washington, D.C. And again, just like Gonzaga, I think it was the first day we had gotten to D.C. and we went out on to like a happy hour with my family. And I got a voicemail from the news director at Northwest Cable News wanting to offer me a job interview. And so I thought, man, this is great, just like college, and this is really, I'm on track. And so we ended up scheduling that. And then when we got back from vacation, I drove up to Seattle for that job interview.
Wow, that's crazy. So then you were hired by Northwest Cable News and doing videography. And how was your experience there?
Yeah, so I actually didn't get that job, which was was fun. They ended up hiring somebody else, and I was devastated. And I actually ended up taking a job at Google for a couple of weeks doing the Google mapping software. Which was interesting. I hated that again because I was sitting in a room, kind of doing mindless work all day.
Yeah.
And it was during that timing that I got another call from Northwest Cable News. They had a pretty high turnover rate at the time. So Keith, I think he was called the chief editor at Northwest Cable News, offered me a job as a video editor that Northwest Cable News, during the recession, had actually laid off all of their videographers. And so at that time, Northwest Cable News was kind of already on a decline. It since has closed down. I think 4 years ago, it closed down, 3 years ago. Even at that time, they had already laid off the videographers and kind of started downsizing, but they still would use editors every day. They would recycle news from the local affiliates, King 5, and then they had a bureau in Spokane and a bureau in Portland. And so we would just consolidate the news and edit it that way.
Oh, so you would just glean the news from other stations and then edit it down for Northwest Cable News?
Yeah, so I did that for about a year. Did not get paid a lot, but it was good because I worked with the executive producer there, Teresa Swenson, who now I think she's she does PR for Safeway, but she got a job at Q13 Fox News, the Fox affiliate, and they were starting to launch a 5 o'clock news that before that time, Q13 only did a nightly news. They would do, their morning show, but then they would do a 9 o'clock news and a 10 o'clock news at night. So they were launching a 5 o'clock news. They needed to bring in a whole new team. So they hired Teresa to be the executive producer, and they needed to hire a videographer. So Teresa had helped get my resume in with Keith Bride, who was I think he was the news operations manager at Q13. So it's really hard to get a job as a videographer in Seattle. There's 4 stations, and each station probably has maybe 30 videographers on staff. So you figure for the city, there's probably 120, 130 videographer jobs, give or take. And so it was really competitive. And I do think that it was Teresa's, on her suggestion, that helped me get that job because I was young. I was 25. I think the next oldest videographer at Q13 was 32. So it was a lot different than Bakersfield, where it was kind of all of us finding our own way. It was, kind of sink or swim time. But just a funny story, I always remember when I was getting my demo tape together to apply to Q13, I had asked the director and one of the weather guys I had worked with at Northwest Cable News, hey, what stories do you think? Because I had actually shot a couple stories when I was at Northwest Cable News. We would do these Northwest postcards where I would go out with Ed Muir, who was the weather guy, and I think we did maybe a dozen of them when I was there, which was kind of extracurricular from the editing that I was hired to do. And we had gone up to Mount Vernon and shot when the snow geese came in. And, every year the snow geese come in and migrate. And so I think Steve and Ed had said, hey, you should really put that snow geese story on there. I think that's really cool. And so I had put that at the end of the demo tape, which, most people that watch demo tapes don't, maybe you watch the first 5 minutes, or, if you're Keith and you're the news operations manager at the Seattle station, you're probably not watching 100 different tapes all the way through. And when I went in, and I think I was getting ready to leave, and, he was going to let me know if I was going to get the job or not. And he goes, man, that geese story you put on their demo tape, man, that's really freaking cool, man. Love those snow geese, man. And I thought, well, A, I'm really glad I put that story on there because, I wasn't going to. And B, that was at the very last, story on my demo tape. And so I thought, man, he must have really watched, was really thorough about his job and really watched through. And that meant a lot to me that they would take the time to watch my whole demo tape.
Wow, that's awesome. And also it was cool because it was one that you had shot and edited, right?
Yeah, so I had done that. One of the Northwest postcards we had done. Yeah, so that was exciting. So
that's funny.
Yeah, so I always, man, the frickin' snow geese.
Yeah.
So then I started at Q13. I think I was hired Monday through Friday at the time to do the 5 o'clock. And then I had transitioned over, I can't remember when, they had transitioned me to work the weekends, which was fine with me because I had worked weekends all the way through in Bakersfield. And so I was just kind of used to that, which kind of transitions well now to the fact that I do weddings every weekend. So even now people ask me, man, don't you hate working weekends? And I think, well, I've always worked weekends all the way through in Bakersfield. In Bakersfield, I was actually hired as a Monday through Friday. And on our third week there, they came in and laid off half the newsroom. And so at that point, I was sent to the weekends anyway. So that was...
Wow, but at least you weren't laid off.
Yeah, so I took that. So I've always just kind of been happy to work when they need me to because I've seen that the opposite of that if you don't have a job. And so
yeah, I
would always rather work a weekend with a job than not.
No job. Yeah.
So I started at Q13 and that was a lot of fun. I would go out and do a lot of stories with reporters during the week. And then on the weekends, I was by myself. And so I would go cover a lot of stuff on my own and either put it together on my own or bring it back and have, reporters and whatever work on it.
Wow. So this was your first real main experience behind the camera, because before you were focused on editing mostly, except for those postcards, like you said. So this was really your chance to shoot video.
Well, it was fun, yeah, because it had been a couple of years, because I had, in Bakersfield, I kind of did both. And then after doing the Google thing and the Northwest cable news thing, it was really nice to go out and shoot videos again and really be, get to be creative. Not that editing itself isn't fun and rewarding, but it really is fun to kind of see a project from the start to finish and edit it and put it together on your own.
Yeah, kind of put your skills to use.
Exactly.
Nice. So then from Q13, how did you segue to starting your own business and make that big leap?
Yeah. So, I think I was at Q13 for almost 4 years. And a lot of times when you work in news, or at least when I was there, you would talk to a lot of people on the outside and they would say, oh, well, are you going to get a promotion, or are you working towards a new title or a new anything? And, in news, it's tough because like I said before, you can work market to market, but, once you get to Seattle, unless you're, like I said, going to go to LA or New York. And I know we had, talked back years.
Yeah, when we first met.
Yeah, we had talked about, do we see ourselves staying here? What do we want to do? And, you had really indicated that Seattle was very important to you, that your family was here and your home was here and, your life was here. And so...
Because you had applied to a job in Arizona or something, right?
Yeah, when we had met, I had just applied, which was funny because I think you thought that I was lying about that.
Oh, yeah, I think you... Thought you were playing me.
Yeah, when we had met, and I said, hey, well, just so you know, I am in the running to get a job as I think it was an investigative videographer in the Arizona market, I guess, which was supposedly, at least the guy that tried to hire me told me it was, a super competitive market for investigative news. Because, like I said, so, in Seattle, there's no progression or in news. So, you work and, you get to do stories every day, but there's no real, well, where are we going next?
Sort of a dead end, seemingly.
Yeah. I mean, it's not dead end, but it's really hard to get, you get a 2% raise every year, or like I would apply, submit for awards and stuff, but it was really hard to figure out like, okay, well, what's next here? Where are we working towards? And, plus news is a grind. I mean, it's a lot of repetition. It's a lot of, long nights and out in the elements and covering, stories that might not be the most ideal to cover, whether it's, crimes or, court or fires or whatever. And so,
Yeah, you're kind of at the beck and call of the station, right?
yeah, which, as somebody that is very strong-willed is challenging to kind of be at the whim of, a management team or an assignment desk that might have other ideas than you think is important for the day to cover or whatnot.
Yeah, and also you're really creative, so you enjoy the fact that you get to edit and put together pieces and just transitioning, I guess, to starting your own business really allowed you to do that.
Yeah, so I remember we had gone out on Valentine's Day of 2013. We had gone out. We were going to go to wine taste, and then we were going to go out. We had dinner reservations. And I remember talking to the guy that owned the bar. It was him and I think it was him and his wife. And we had talked about how they, owned and operated their own winery and that they could, make their own schedule and really kind of have something that they could own and invest in themselves and continue to build. And I thought, man, that would be really cool. That would be something, if I could figure out a way to have something that was my own that you could, I could take pride in, not that I didn't take pride in the work I did at Q13, but to take ownership of, I guess. And so, I think we went out to dinner that night and I said, hey, what do you think if I got a camera, because all the equipment that I had before was all owned by the station. So, I couldn't, like, for example, go take a station camera out and, do a product video.
Right.
So I said, well, what do you think? And, luckily you said, no, I think that would be a really good idea.
Wow. Good. Yeah. And so then you were on your way to starting your own business, but then you still did work at Q13 while you were getting your business and your feet on the ground with all of that. So for a while there, you were doing kind of double duty on jobs, right?
Yeah. So my friend Paul, who now works at KTLA in Los Angeles, I had asked him for advice because I had no idea about what equipment to get or, anything about. I mean, you're still, you learn every day as a small business owner, but I was certainly learning at the time. And so he helped me get together. We built a list of, okay, we're going to get this camera. And because the intention was that he was going to kind of help me out and do some work. And he ended up getting a great job in LA pretty quick after I started. So, it ended up good for him and good for me. But we got together a camera list and figured out, the name Best Made Videos. One of my friends helped me come up with that name because we thought, well, that would be good for, search engines and searches in general. And people might type in, best video or best, videographer or whatever. And so plus, I've always discovered that, if you have something near the start of the alphabet, most sites list you alphabetically.
Oh,
so
yeah,
just
that's a good point.
A tip, it's always good. You don't want to be the best wedding videographer.
Like Pizza A Mart or...
Yeah,
A Pizza Mart.
Exactly. A Pizza Mart or like Sounds Unlimited, which is a DJ company. They're always listed as Sounds Unlimited.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Even though that doesn't really make sense, but it is smart. So, so I got together a camera list and, started an LLC and, I had no intention of quitting yet, but I was going to see kind of what I could do while working, with the goal to transition eventually.
Wow. So that you did that for about a year while you were getting the business all put together and set up?
Yeah. So I remember right after I bought my camera, there was the mudslides up in Darrington, up north in the Northwest. And people might know that was a pretty big national news story. And, the governor toured it and flew out in a helicopter and everything. And I remember I was up there and, it's like 4.5 hours away. And there was a Craigslist ad because I was, always looking at, because once you buy your camera and stuff and you're like, all right, well, let's start doing work, and, work doesn't just come to you. You have to really go out and hustle and find it. And there was a Craigslist ad for a magic show that night that they had come into town, I assume from Vegas or wherever. And they were doing a performance, and they thought, well, let's have a videographer come and do it. And so I, emailed or called or whatever, and I talked to, it was Christian Ford. I talked to I think it was his dad. It was his manager, but it was his dad. And he had said, well, what do you want to come film the performance tonight? And I, literally no idea. And I said, $200, let's, $100 an hour. That seems whatever. And so they said, all right, you're hired. And so I hadn't done the math of how long it would take me to get back from Darrington to Q13. We were already working overtime. So like by the time I would get back home, get my camera, and then get all the way back up, it was in Everett. It was about an hour north of Seattle, the performance. I think I got there 10 minutes before showtime, and it was a very, very stressful car ride up that night.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I forgot about that story. Yeah, you were rushing to get there, and that was your first gig, the infamous Christian Ford magician.
Yeah, that was my first. I think I had done like a couple of things for free. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
We had done that masquerade ball event.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And I can't remember, but that was my first paid gig. I can't remember the order of them, but I do know that was my first paid gig, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I think I had only used my camera like twice because, everyone, you go buy your camera, and then it's really kind of awkward to go out and just like create content, unless, for me anyway, unless someone's paying me or I'm hired to do it. I don't just like go out and film the trees blowing for no reason. So it was tough, but they were happy, and I brought my laptop because they wanted to just transfer the footage, and they were looking at it, and they were really excited because I don't think they had any expectations really at all. And he paid me $200 cash, and that was it. And I thought, man, this is really cool that like, I got, paid basically what I would get paid a whole day at Q13 to work for 2 hours. And then B, it was just really cool to like film something and like give it to them and see their excitement. I just remember that he had some trick where he, stabbed a deck of cards or something with a knife, and they said, oh, did you get that? Did you get that? And so I'm pulling up the footage, and they go, oh yeah, and I think they like high-fived each other or whatever. And I thought, man, that's really cool. Cause in news, you don't always get that sort of feedback, or it's a lot of like, well, what have you done for me lately? And every day you come in and it's a new thing. And so it was really cool to kind of see that, that visceral excitement that they had, and to get the money and then to go home and be done. And so there was a lot of things that appealed to that. Yeah.
And to really feel like what you were doing was appreciated, and then you also got to edit it right down into your own package, and that's kind of part of the fun too for you, isn't it?
Yeah. So he ended up hiring me. I edited a couple more things for them, and he ended up being actually a pretty good client for a year and a half or so, and I actually got repeat work out of that, which was really cool as well.
Wow, awesome. Yeah. So then once you finally made the decision to quit Q13, you kind of started focusing more on shooting weddings, right? Or
yeah, so it was funny that I ended up doing the job for Seattle Bride. I think it was Seattle Magazine, Seattle Bride Magazine, and they needed a series of 6 videos put together for an event they had coming up. And I don't think they would have paid with my level of expertise, which was not a lot at the time, doing corporate video work. They probably wouldn't have hired me outright, but they said, well, hey, we'll do a trade deal where we'll give you, whatever you tell us, whatever you think it's worth in advertising dollars. Cause, getting a spot on their website didn't cost them anything, but it was, well, at the time I perceived valuable. So I put together a deal for them. And it was funny because in the meeting, Paul was still there, and we sat down, and they said, well, we could offer you work we could offer you advertising space in Seattle Bride Magazine as well as Seattle Magazine. And I said, I don't think we're going to be doing weddings. I don't think that's anything I want to do.
I forgot about that.
And so looking back, it was very funny to think that, I think I'd only had my camera a month or two, but that I had really no intention of doing weddings at all.
Yeah, that's funny. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, I started doing a lot more corporate stuff and increasingly discovered, that it's hard to find work. And I was still working in Q13, but I'm thinking, man, we got to get over this hump here. I think, it had been a couple of months and, I thought it was going to be overnight and it's not. And it ended up only taking 9 months, but 9 months is a long time when you buy your stuff and you think, well, I'm starting this new adventure. And then, it took 9 months to quit and really do everything. But I ended up getting a call for a wedding. I think it was a Friday and the wedding was on Sunday at Pickering Barn in Issaquah. And they were going to have an uncle or somebody film the wedding and, they spaced out or couldn't make it or whatever. And so they said, hey, we'll give you $800. That's what they had to pay if you'll come out and do our wedding. And so I thought, all right. So, I had never filmed a wedding. I really hadn't even gone to that many weddings because you're a lot more popular than I am, but I didn't have a lot of friends that were getting married. At least, I was 25 or 6 at the time.
I think we'd been to maybe a couple weddings together.
Yeah, but I didn't, you're not ever really paying attention to, well, this is the order. You're just kind of eating and drinking. And so I don't even know who the photographer was, but they were really nice and they helped me get through it. And I always remember Ray Van Winkle was the officiant, and I still work with him today. I worked with him this last summer, so that's fun to still have that connection. But I filmed the wedding, and I thought, well, I'm going to go, how am I going to make this different? And I thought, well, I'll go do a bunch of interviews and really cover it like a news story. And I did, but I quickly discovered that people don't want to do that at a wedding. They want you to film, and it took a little while to kind of figure out the tone of our videos, but I got done that night, and I think I called you, and you said, oh, well, how's it going? And I said, man, it's really great because, when you're in news, nobody really wants you there, whether it's, somebody just had an accident or somebody got robbed or whatever. People don't want you there. You get thrown out of a lot of places in news. You're not allowed in a lot of places in news. And so it was really great to kind of be welcome. Everyone wants to be, well, for the most part, everyone wants to be on camera at a wedding or, hey, it's a photographer, take a photo. Hey, take a video of us.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. And so I ended up doing their video for them, and they were happy because I think they had pretty low expectations. And they were happy, and that was we started rolling that way.
Wow, yeah, and it was probably nice, like you said, to really feel like appreciated, but also feel like it's a happy, joyous occasion, not a sad or scary news story.
Yeah, everyone, we got fed, and people do drink. I wouldn't drink at the wedding, but you got food, and you got listen to music and film people dancing and stuff. I mean, there's a lot worse ways to make money on a weekend than covering the things that I had done previously.
Yeah, and you're recording someone's probably one of their happiest moments or memories of life. So, yeah, they should be happy and appreciative.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So then you just started rolling with the weddings, and we went to wedding shows together and kind of started trying to get more advertising and right?
Yeah. So I ended up I think we did 4 weddings the first summer together. I had one of my friends, his friend was getting married, so we did their wedding. And then I think I booked 2 other ones on Craigslist. So we did 4 weddings that first year. And I think by December, when I put in my notice, I had maybe 4 or 5 weddings on the books for the next summer. And I think you start trying to do the math of thinking like, well, what's the absolute minimum that I would need to spend this year to live, to be able to quit and survive. So I ended up, with my mom's blessings and with, your blessings, quitting right before Christmas in 2000. I guess it would have been that same year, 2013.
Wow. Yeah. So I guess it was about, like you said, about almost a year later.
Yeah. And it was scary. It was a lot of pressure. And I think that first year, Rosie and I, our dog, took really long walks. And I had a lot of spare time to come into, your schools, to, you're a teacher, to come into your schools and volunteer. And then, year after year now, it always seems like it's busier than the last year. And so I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. So then, and you've really been trying to get a lot of SEO, search engine optimization, and you've done a ton of work with Wedding Wire and the Nod, and you just seem like you have lots of different venues as far as advertising and getting the word out there about your business, which I don't know how you do it, but you always manage to be on top of that stuff, as well as, hustling for business and actually shooting video and editing. And sometimes I don't know how you find the time to do everything.
Yeah, well, it's like I said, we did 4 weddings that first year, and then I think we did 39. I did 39 the next year.
Wow.
Not all of those were full price. There was a lot of, friends or other people and whatnot. And then at that point, I discovered that the number of dates that people would hire a videographer for was very limited, right? And so it would be really hard because maybe in December you would have to take a booking for August, 10th or whatever. Well, that was it. And so, at that point you were deciding like, that's the max amount of money I'm going to make on that day. And, I need to hold that date for that client. So
because summers are very popular for weddings.
Yeah. So, our wedding season in Seattle, as you know, is basically like Memorial Day to Labor Day. And so I ended up finding Joe Murphy, who now has been with me for 4 years, to come on so that I could hire him and train him to shoot wedding videos for us as well. And then I would do the editing. And so that's been really, beneficial now because we're able to offer more people, a quality service that I think that we provide, but also maximize kind of our reach and the ability that we have to accommodate dates during the summer.
Yeah, that was a big transition. And also a big one, though, too, because even though, you are able to double book and he's going out and filming weddings separately than you're still taking the time to edit and go through and actually put together the final finished product. So it's still, it's a ton of work on your part too, because you're hustling for the business and then also putting together the actual finished product with the editing. So
yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of marketing. It's a lot of editing, client meetings. I think I just had an email come in that one of our phone calls later today has to be rescheduled, which is fine. You're accommodating a lot of different schedules and dates, but yeah, it's been good. And like I said, I stand by, the product that we offer. And I think that we do a good job for people.
Yeah. And you're impeccable with your response time for people. You're always super quick to respond, which I think a lot of people appreciate. And also, I'm just always impressed by your turnaround time for the videos that you're able to put together and edit and just really succinctly, but also, just really high quality, but still in a pretty quick manner. So I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, we just I had a last minute wedding come up yesterday that the uncle of the bride had called me on Friday and said, hey, I just got into town and I just discovered, my niece doesn't have the money to hire a videographer, and can you come record her ceremony for her? And so of course we did. And we were sitting there talking before the ceremony, and he said, well, what would you say makes you stand out? What's your niche, or what's your, well, at first I said, wedding videos is our niche, because a lot of people ask, you do video production, what do you focus on? But I said, we do a lot of weddings. And he said, well, what? No, but in terms of weddings, what makes you stand out? And I said, well, I think just our responsiveness. And I do think that the customer service that we offer, I talked with one of my other friends, Kate, who's a photographer, and we both agree that, videography or photography, or, your talent level in terms of shooting is subjective, right? I mean, you might like one thing over another thing, or I might like a certain style, but One thing you can always improve on is your customer service. And that is, objective, right? That you can either be responsive or not, right? And you can either deliver quickly or not. And yeah, I mean, not everybody is going to like the different types of videos, or you might, like a certain style more than somebody else, but you can always improve on the customer service that you have for clients, and you can always, work on that. And the gentleman had mirrored that sentiment where he had said that he had, I think, emailed like 10 different people, and I was one of only 2 that got back to him, and I was the first. And then, I don't know what other ended up happening with the other company, but, not that every wedding we booked the day before or 2 days before, but, people like to know that, right? That you're going to respond and that you're going to be available. So,
yeah. Wow. That you're not just going to be MIA or hard to deal with. Yeah, it's nice that you are really on it, like I said, with the communication and kind of able to control what you're able to control, right? Like you said, the style might be different depending on what you like or what different people like, but the stuff you are able to really to control and do your best at, you really do a good job with that. So yeah, well, this is awesome. It's so fun to hear the whole history. So how's this year looking, and what's next?
Yeah, this year has been really good. We're starting to approach, peak wedding season. We have a triple threat on this next weekend on May 5th. We have 2 weddings on the 5th, and then we have one on the 6th.
Wow, you've never had 3 in a row like that, have you?
Yeah, so Joe's working the one, Joe and Matt, and then I'll be at the one with, we're doing the same day edit, actually.
Oh, wow.
So that'll be a lot of fun. And then, yeah, this year is looking good. We still do a lot of corporate video work. I just filmed a high school play last night, and we're filming a human resources hiring video for a company up north. But I do think that weddings are always going to be kind of a major part of our business model now. I enjoy getting to know the couples and, kind of their stories and meeting them before, and, spending the day with them. And even if it's the ones that Joe, shoots, I mean, we're involved in, everything. We're able to follow each other on social media and, kind of follow along with each other's, I'll see people post like, oh, I've got my bridal shower today, or yeah, like our couple for this weekend, Jasmine and Josh, we added each other on social media a couple months ago, and it was really fun because he went on his bachelor party and she went on her bachelor party, and kind of I was able to really follow along, and they see me shooting other weddings and editing other weddings, and it's really fun to kind of be a part of each other's lives. I mean, this is kind of the whole reason why I wanted to do this podcast. And, next week now we'll talk to, another different wedding vendor that's not myself. But I think it's so cool nowadays where we can be so accessible with our clients or couples or however you want to call them. But, they can get to really know me before the wedding, and I can really get to know them. And I think it's so different than even 5-10 years ago where, you call somebody on the phone or hire somebody, or maybe you have one meeting with them or whatever. And then, they're going to be with you on your wedding day, which is, one of the most intimately personal days of your life.
Yeah. And it's also nice because then you can track them or, follow them if they have big news, like if they're expecting a child, or help them celebrate their anniversaries, right?
Exactly. So just, today, Dominic and Brooke, the day that we're recording this, April 29th, Dominic and Brooke, just had their 1-year wedding anniversary. So I was able to reshare their video and, message them and tell them congrats. And, it's really exciting that it really did used to bother me that, like the first couple Craigslist weddings, you're not intimately personal with these clients, right?
Yeah.
But it really would bother me though that I would spend, one of the most important days with them, be with them, as they got their wedding dress on and as they did their first look or cried during their vows and all these personal things. And then I would never see him again. And I just thought, man, so that's, why I've tried to be really good about the follow-up and the social media and, really doing that, because it is really cool for me to kind of build this network of, hopefully really happy couples that, we had a really great experience together and now we can continue to be close in each other's lives. Emily, who was one of, my first wedding 4 years ago. Her good friend's getting married now. Allie is getting married August 18th of this year. And she was one of Emily's, in her bridal party. And so it was really cool that I've gotten to know Allie for, 5 years now. And she was dating, Paul at the time, and now they're engaged, and you got to meet them. And I'm really excited to do that this summer. And it's cool that you're able to keep in each other's lives like that, even after the wedding day. So,
yeah. And you can keep making couples happy, and then kind of just spreads also word of mouth. I mean, if they had a really good experience with you, then they'll be more inclined to recommend you to friends and family as well.
Exactly. So yeah, no, it's hopefully it's a win-win for everybody, and we just kind of keep on trucking and keep on hustling and hope that it keeps going good. So
nice. Wow. Well, this was so interesting and fun to hear the full story. I know I pretty much experienced it alongside you, most of it, not the college stuff and all of that, but it was so fun to hear the whole story, and for you to share some of your thoughts and some of your feelings about your company and all the experiences that you've had that have led up to it. So yeah, this has been awesome.
Well, yeah, like I said, so thank you so much for, taking time out of your weekend to come here and do this. Next week, we'll have another interview with a wedding professional that hopefully, our listeners can get to know. And again, just really the point of this podcast is to let people, whether they're photographers, videographers, disc jockeys, wedding planners, I want people to be able to tell their stories, and so our listeners can get to know them. And so then, if you're planning the wedding and you are thinking about hiring, Alan, who I'm going to interview he's a disc jockey. Well, if I'm thinking about hiring Alan for my wedding, and if I can, listen to him in his own words, tell his own story about being a wedding professional, I think that's a really invaluable resource. And I really hope that, over the next, months and years, that we can build a really cool directory of people's stories and their, the kind of their backgrounds and biographies. And so it can be a real growing and ever evolving directory of wedding professionals.
Yeah, sounds great. Hence the name, Get to Know Your Wedding Pro.
So that does it for this week's episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. If you want any more information about our video production company, you can check out www.bestmadevideos.com. You can search Best Made Videos on any major social media platform. So thanks again for listening to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.